Well, thank you for going ahead and joining today. If you're just joining in, it looks like we have a few more people popping in. Um, I wanted to go in real quick, why we're running this series, why we're going to be doing it weekly, and what we hope to have you guys get out of it. And I started this roofing success series because I noticed an overwhelming trend in the roofing industry, and that is every roofing company thinks they need more leads, and more leads will solve all their problems. But unfortunately, sometimes that's just not the case. And another problem I noticed is a majority of marketing companies, lead brokers, etc., are more than willing to sell you on a dream of leads, even if that's not exactly what you need at this given time. And so my goal with the series is to provide you with every resource that you need, from leads to how to operate your business effectively, and most importantly, how to create more profit within your organization. Now, want to go through some housekeeping real quick. I know that we as business owners are very, very busy in our day to day between taking care of our teams, fielding our customer calls, and generally just putting out fires. But today, I want to challenge you to do something a little bit different because I take the time to carefully vet each of our speakers to make sure you can have the most value packed hour of your week when you join here every week for the Beyond Leads Roofing Success series. And so, what I'm going to challenge you to do today is to close out any other windows that you have open on your computer, throw your phone in a drawer, and then pull out a notepad and get ready to learn something new and something that I'm actually really, really excited about this week because I'm going to be applying it to my business as well. Now, with that being said, who here thinks the United States tax code is confusing? Go ahead and throw one in the chat. And I just realized I don't know how to throw check the chat yet, but if you think the U.S. tax code is confusing, go ahead and throw a one in the chat there.
I'm going to
There
say
we
no.
go. Chris Middleton thinks it's confusing. Our expert over here. But with that being said, what I'm gonna do is I brought in today a very special guest, Chris Middleton and Tyler Buechler of Make Taxes Fair. And Chris and Tyler's mission is to make sure that business owners like you all stop overpaying the U.S. government, right? And they show you how to do that both legally and strategically. And as the founders of Make Taxes Fair, Chris and Tyler have dedicated their careers to helping company owners like us to, again, keep more of our hard earned money. So, with that being said, Chris, Tyler, I'll let you take it away.
Rock on. I'm going to share my screen and make sure. Can you see my screen?
I'm seeing it
Perfect.
on my end. Can you guys throw one in the chat if you can see the screen?
Yeah, I can see it in the background too. So perfect.
Okay.
Today, we're here to talk about how to turbocharge your business using Uncle Sam's dollars. Really, let's be honest, your dollars, right? It's not Uncle Sam's, it's ours. Somebody once said the IRS is an acronym for theirs. They think of our money as theirs, which it's not, it's ours. So, the IRS, right? So, before we get too far, let me tell you a little bit about us, and we believe that the tax system is broken. Here's why I think that. This is a visual. I love this visualization of the taxpayer roadmap. This is created by the IRS. So they admit that their system is a system of confusion because that doesn't look like a roadmap. It says at the top left of taxpayer roadmap, and I'm like, baloney, that looks like a rat's nest. If that's a roadmap, where the heck's the GPS? Well, the GPS is the, as my dad used to call it, the infernal revenue code, is the joke in my family. My dad did taxes growing up when I was growing up. And, that's the roadmap, right? It's like, good luck trying to figure that out. So, we as busy business owners, here's the struggle. It's like we already lack the time, energy, and desire to do a lot of things in our business. We already live in this state of overwhelm. And so most busy business owners say, oh, well, my CPA has me covered, right? Says every busy business owner ever. The reality is this: most CPAs don't, because most CPAs are what I would call happy historians. I'm not here to knock the accountants of the world. They trust me, I've been busy all day helping people with their taxes. I get it. But that most CPAs are that happy historian where they're living in a reactive, not a proactive state. And the problem is, we see in the headlines, we see that it's possible. Billionaires, politicians, large companies pay little to nothing in taxes because they are attacking their tax bill with a system. So what we've decided is it's time for you to fight back with a system that legitimately will reduce your taxes by 30 to 50% or more without the fear of audit or jail time, right? That sounds good. I'm too pretty to go to jail. So what we tell people is we do that through what we call our clear edge framework. So the clear edge framework, you're educated, and I'm not going to read this to you, but we're going to tackle these pillars of tax savings, right? And the first pillar is credits. Super powerful. I just talked to somebody today that they could get a 50% credit on every dollar that they give. There's a state program. A lot of states have a program around education and giving money to education. They're like, oh, 50% credit. I give 10 grand and I get a $5,000 credit. I give 20 grand, I get a $10,000 credit. That's a good deal, right? So the first strategy we're going to share with you today is a tax credit. The second strategy we're going to share is going to be about deduction optimization, or the D in the EDGE acronym, right? Before I get too far, I gotta say, because we're giving tax information and tax presentation here, this presentation is not legal or tax advice, right? That's very important. Tax advice or legal advice is when you sit down with a qualified professional and say, here's my situation, and you get one-to-one tax advice. So today is meant to give you general information, very broad in scope, to kind of open your eyes and be like, hey, here's something you didn't know. So, with that being said, I would like to introduce and get right to the point. I'd like to introduce something called the Disabled Access Tax Credit. Who has heard of the disabled? Drop a one if you can do that in the chat, or if you can't in the chat, drop in the Q&A. Uh, put it out there and say, hey, I've heard of this, or I haven't heard of this. I'm not sure if the chat's enabled, but if you can, drop it in the chat or drop it in the Q&A. If you've heard of the Disabled Access Tax Credit, this is a tax credit, so pay attention. Who's ready to hear about $5,000? You showed up today and you're going to get $5,000 or potentially $5,000 right now. So this is called the Disabled Access Tax Credit. And what it is it's tied to the ADA, or Americans with Disability Act, which became law in 1990, but was updated. The last major overhaul of that legislation was in 2008. Well, the difference between 1990 and 2008, other than I had a heck of a lot more hair in 1990, right, than in 2008, is really this little devices, right, that we have, our phones. The internet was a lot more prevalent in 2008 than it was in 1990. So when the ADA became law, it was like, physical spaces, right? You have physical spaces as far as ADA ramps and bathroom, etc. But with the update in 2008 and the expansion of the ADA, websites were required, virtual spaces were required to be ADA compliant. Who knew that? Who knew that ADA compliance needed to be for websites? Anybody? That's now you're like, oh, is my website ADA compliant? Well, I had a friend who worked for a company that they did websites, like they were an affiliate marketing firm, and they had one website that was like halfway through the year had generated $7.5 million in profit for their company. They were uber concerned about ADA compliance. They were like, we got to make sure our stuff is ADA compliant, because they wanted to make sure that they weren't going to get slapped with a frivolous lawsuit because somebody couldn't access the website, right? So for business owners that make their website ADA compliant, or their physical space ADA compliant, there's up to a $5,000 tax credit. And this is a year by year, every stinking year you can get up to 5 grand. So if I said, would you like a credit or a deduction? Which would you want? A deduction? Everybody should raise their hand because we like our deductions, right? Those are what we use to keep our business rolling and running. But credits are dollar for dollar value of tax. So let me show you the difference between a credit and a deduction. So let's assume we had income of 100 grand, we had expenses or deductions of 25,000. And so that's our taxable income, the income that we're taxed on, down to $75,000. Pretty easy math, right? So I wish this was the case. It's not, but let's assume a flat tax of 10%, right? So $75,000 times 10%, that leaves us with taxes of $7,500. Cool. So the $25,000 just drops our taxable income. So that's worth $2,500 if we're in the 10% bracket. A credit, however, same scenario, income is 100 grand, deductions, expenses are slightly less, $20,000, not 25. So we have higher taxable income of 80 grand, but assuming that flat tax of 10%, our total tax bill is $8,000, not 7,500. But then here comes in that $5,000 credit, which drops off of that tax bill to leave us with a tax due of $3,000. So if you were presented with these two scenarios, would you want to pay $7,500 or would you want to pay 3,000? I'd take the latter, all 7 days a week and twice on Sundays, right? That's what I say. Give me a credit any day of the week. So a tax credit comes in to give $4,500 less total to the government as a tax credit. That's phenomenal. So how do we do this, right? Who qualifies for this ADA, this thing? Like I'm a website guy. I do taxes. George, that's kind of your jam or your sandbox, right? You do the ADA your websites and so who qualifies for this stuff? Well, one, you have to be one of two of these. Either you have to make 1 million or less in gross income. Accounting terms are weird. Gross meaning total income, not bleh, gross, right? So your total income needs to be 1 million or less. I have yet to meet a roofing company that is doing less than $1 million. And you're selling more than a hamburger or a pizza. You're selling a roof or HVAC system, right? You're selling dollar high ticket items or services. So, or you have to have less than 30 full-time equivalent employees. That's a lot of business owners in America. There's a lot of companies that we have a few clients that are over 30 employees, but most roofing companies or most construction companies, they work under the subcontractor model, right? They have a lot of subs and they have a few 5 to 10, 15 employees that are actual W-2 employees. So a lot of companies in America meet one of these tests, either less than 1 million gross income or less than 30 full-time equivalent employees. Okay, so that's test number one. Anybody in the room not one of these people? If you are not one of these businesses, don't tune me out. Stick around because we're going to talk about another tax strategy here in a minute. But how do you get this disabled access tax credit? Well, one, you have to identify, hey, where am I spending money on ADA compliance, right? Am I doing video testimonials and adding closed caption, right? So that people who are hearing impaired can read the text? Are there their website or email marketing, video stuff that you're doing to make things ADA compliant? We have a whole resource about what is and isn't ADA compliance on our website. But at the end of the day, you can do an audit and say, okay, what is it that I'm spending that I'm already doing ADA compliance? And then you look for opportunities to improve and say, what am I doing that's not ADA compliance? Where can I tune that up? And then what am I doing to maintain and keep things ADA compliant, right? So to get the credit and to be audit proof, you really got to do the work. You can't just, oh yeah, we're ADA compliant. You really got to identify and say, what is this that we're doing that makes these things ADA compliant? Kosher? Things looking good there? So I want to show you two businesses, and this was a true story. When I very first discovered this credit about 6 years ago, I did a presentation, and Wendy and Barry were sitting in the audience, and they heard me talk about this, and they're like, this is cool. And both of them at the time were getting ready to do a revamp of their website, right? So Wendy listened in, and I interviewed both of these people after a few months later. Wendy, she decided, yeah, she wasn't going to do any ADA improvements to her website, but Barry was like, I want to do the ADA compliance. Well, Wendy didn't choose ADA compliant website, web services. She didn't want to invest that at the moment. She invested $3,500 into her website revamp, and she ended up not claiming or being eligible to claim the disabled access tax credit. Barry, however, he went with a web provider that provided ADA compliant services, invested a little bit more for his website, 6 grand, but he got a tax credit of $2,875. So he actually, his net cost or net investment on his website, which was much more robust than Wendy's, ended up actually costing him less than what it cost Wendy. That's the power of a tax credit. He got a rebate effectively on his marketing web services. On top of that, Wendy, she chose the non-ADA compliant stuff. So she was at risk for a lawsuit, right? Somebody could come in and say, hey, I couldn't, frivolous lawsuit. Don't shoot the messenger. They exist and I don't like them either. But somebody could come in and say, hey, I'm going to sue you because your stuff, I couldn't consume your content or whatever, right? So she's at risk for that. And I found this out that when you make your stuff ADA compliant, you actually get a little bit of an organic bump in your SEO rankings, right? Their search engine optimization kind of caters to and gives priority a little bit to websites that are ADA compliant because it's going to have a broader reach to the general public, right? So a little bit of a comparison between the two. One of my favorite people on the planet, Adam Sand, he says, there is no substitute for the hard, boring work. And again, the Pirates of the Caribbean meme, don't be running with looking over your shoulder for the IRS to come after you. When you claim a credit or do something like this, you got to do the work. You got to execute and do the improvements and take a hard look and ask the hard questions of your marketing professionals. George, I'm going to say, hey, you might get some questions now saying, how is our stuff ADA compliant, plugins, and those types of things? So we got to make sure that we do the work. But talking about audits, right? So if you claim this credit, or people ask like, oh, Chris, if we do what we tell you to, you're telling us to do, or I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to get audited. Well, you can execute. One, this is a totally legitimate tax strategy. It's a very legitimate tax credit that's been around for a long time. And it's just people don't know about it. So when you're executing, and we're going to show you a resource here in a moment where you can go to get a playbook for this strategy. But when you're executing this strategy, you want to make sure that you document how is this ADA compliant, right? You're a roofing contractor, you're an HVAC contractor, you're not a tax person, you're not a website person. So make sure that you're engaged enough to ask the questions. Say, show me or tell me, how is this ADA compliant and what are we doing to make it so, right? Like Captain Picard, make it so, number one or number two. I forget. I'm not a Trekkie, more of a Star Wars fan. But at the end of the day, how are we making sure that this stuff is ADA compliant? Then document that. And then make sure that whoever you're getting these services from, ADA marketing services, or if you're investing in your physical space, make sure that those investments are delineated or segregated out on the invoice to say ADA compliant services rendered for blah blah blah. Insert you're doing, right? So if you get audited, you can tell the IRS agent, well, hey, I asked the questions, I made sure that these are the questions I asked to make sure how is this ADA compliant. I'm not a web person. I do roofing, I do HVAC, I do construction, right? That's not my jam, but I made sure that I was not just blindly taking somebody word on that. And see, their invoice says ADA compliant services rendered. Sweet. So you show that to the IRS and you're like, hey, I'm not, making this up. I legitimately can claim this 5,000 up to 5,000 tax credit every year. That's pretty fantastic. So I stole this from a business coach a long time ago. Welcome to fabulous vagueness, right? What starts in ambiguity stays in ambiguity. So who learned something cool? Drop in the chat, drop in the Q&A. Who learned something? Who felt like it was worth their time to show up so we could show you $5,000, up to $5,000 every stinking year? And folks, I pick up books. I go to the thrift store, pick up books that were written in like 2013 and thumb through them. And I'm like, they're tax strategy or tax books. And I'm like, oh, that was written in 2013. That's still applicable today, right? This is one of those things in the tax code that's been around for a couple of almost decades at this point. So this is not something that's new, and it's not something that's going anywhere. So thank you for listening in. Thank you for being here. In the first, 22 minutes, we've given you a credit worth up to $5,000. And we put together on maketaxesfair.com/volume up. I love your name, George. So crank up the volume, folks. Volume up at maketaxesfair.com is where you can go. We put playbook. You can scroll down. I gave you a screenshot of the first top of the page, but down below there's a link where you can click and get access additional training. We've blasted through fairly quickly this tax strategy, and we have a playbook that is available to you that goes into more detail and gives you specific next steps. So guys and gals out there, if you're this and you're like, my tax person is not telling me about this. Well, one, they may not know that this even exists. There's a lot of tax credits that a lot of tax professionals just haven't taken the time to figure out and say, oh, if we do this, right, you can't claim this credit unless you're already investing in ADA compliance. So that you could retroactively look back, even though we're in 2025, you could look back to 2024 and say, we did do some ADA compliance. Can we max out the full $5,000 credit? Maybe. In all likelihood, you probably weren't fully optimized on that. So the ship has sailed on that calendar year. You kind of got to do stuff in the calendar year. But now that you're aware of it, now you can say, I'm going to pop the hood on this and look, is a couple of hours of your time worth up to $5,000 to say, hey, let's maximize this? I think a couple hours of your time to get up to $5,000 every stinking year is pretty worthwhile, right? That's a good ROI. That's 2,500 bucks. If you put hours into this, that's 25 bucks an hour. And I don't know about you, but I don't charge 2,500 bucks an hour. That's a pretty good ROI. So, any questions? Any questions? While we wait for questions, Tyler, you're here as my business partner. I want a second, and can you introduce yourself? And I'm gonna monitor and see if there's any questions in the chat, in the Q&A or the chat.
Yeah,
So
sure. Yeah, so I love telling our story to people also. So for everyone that's listening, just so you know, I'm one half of the company of Make Taxes Fair. I don't have any accounting or CPA or any kind of financial degrees or experience. I'm an experienced entrepreneur. Started businesses when I was in college, been doing it for about 20 years. So I like to tell people I'm not a tax professional, I'm a professional taxpayer, just like all the rest of us. For about 15 and a half years, I had some companies where we did credit card processing for businesses, point of sale systems, websites with e-commerce. We also built a payment portal for IT companies to use. Throughout my time, we grew and expanded and we served a lot of clients. We started increasing what we made and we paid just ungodly amounts of tax. And over the years, I was looking constantly for tax strategies, just like the stuff that Chris is talking about right now. I had a couple business partners and we went constantly searching for things around the United States, trying to find people that could do things. We found a couple here and there. But what absolutely amazed me and blew me away, I always say this, when I met Chris, my mind was blown. I thought to myself, I've just met Rain Man of the tax code. He talked about tax in such a simple way. Every strategy, there's over 430 active strategies in the US tax code. And Chris just started going off about all of them. That got me excited because I wanted to have something new, right? Looking for another way to serve people. I couldn't think of a better way than to do exactly this because everything that we do in our company and Make Taxes Fair is literally serving American business owners the way that I wanted to be served for over 15 years of doing my old businesses. Every question that I had, how does this work? What else is possible? If I do this, will it get me in trouble? Can it be done right? All of those general questions start boiling down and really getting to the nitty gritty. We have answers for all of those things. And that's an exciting thing because every time that we have somebody new come into our company, it's always the same thing. I'm sure you all can relate. You know, there's better ways to do stuff out there, but you're not a tax person, right? You don't know the code. The tax code is a beast, almost 80,000 pages at this point. Who knows that thing? Well, luckily, there are some people that do. You're wondering, what kind of strategies? You probably Google stuff. You bring it to your professional person, right? They give you general answers or they just brush it off by saying, oh, that's a red flag or that'll get you audited or, oh, that's playing in the gray area. And I have had people tell me this all the time too. And I heard it myself in business. Asking a tax professional, how can I lower my tax liability? And when they look at you and ask, well, did you keep track of all of your miles? And do you have any big purchases to make before the end of the year? It made me want to strangle somebody. You're telling me go spend a whole bunch of money so I can save a little bit of tax money on things that I really don't have to do? I mean, if I need it to run my business, sure, makes sense. That's a perk. But if I'm spending the money just to get the tax break and I'm net loss, doesn't make any sense. And so
Yeah.
all of that is the fuel and the passion behind why this is absolutely amazing. This one tax strategy we're talking about right now, $5,000, that's one out of over 430. It's an easy one that anyone can use. There's a lot of strategies that can be six-figure tax saving strategies all on their own. And that is the power of it. It's a power of many, right? We got all kinds of strategies that work, and now it makes sense to me. The code is an instruction book on how to do this the right way. You just simply need somebody that you can ask questions and get a straight answer from. And that is exactly what we're bringing to the table. That's why I'm so excited about it. Because as an entrepreneur myself, it's finally the answers I always wanted.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. I love to poke Tyler and I, he's best man at wedding recently, and I always like to poke fun of him. He's the better looking version or better looking partner and the better at paying taxes because he had the professional taxpayer status, right? So
With pride, I hold that title.
but who's ready for more? So thank you again for being here. You've shown up, you're present. I can see that a couple of you have signed up for some of the playbooks. We get email notifications when you go to the maketaxesfair.com /volume up. So thank you. That's incredibly humbling when people are like, wow, this is worthy of my time to go look and investigate a little bit more. So congratulations to you for taking action. So who's ready for more? Let's continue to crank up the volume here. I want to tell you about the Augusta Rule. This is a fun one. This is what I like to call this tax planning 101. And I was sitting there at a baseball game. I don't know, it was 2018, and a buddy of mine, CPA friend, and I was sitting there telling him about the Augusta Rule, and he's like, is that legal? Can you do that? And I'm like, bro, come on. This is like tax planning 101. So the Augusta Rule is this little loophole, and thanks to TikTok, right, and social media, it's some traction in the tax planning world. Who has heard of the Augusta Rule? So who here has heard of the Augusta Rule and knows what it is? Anybody? Sometimes we go to conferences and speak, and there's a room of 100 people. I maybe get one or two hands come up. So the one or two hands that come up, I'm like, okay, have you done it? Are you doing this? And their hands go down, right? So some people have heard of this, but very few people actually implement, which I think is a crying shame. So the Augusta Rule is this: you can rent your home to your business, and the rent you pay is collected by you as tax-free income, and it's a deduction from your business income as long as you follow certain rules. On average, we help people collect over $24,000 in tax-free. Who wants to take to $24,000 out of their business tax-free? Yeah, me. I do. So how this works is this: you rent your home to your business as long as you don't rent it for 14 days or more. So it has to be 14 days or less in the calendar year. It must be your home. So you have to live, it has to be your roof that you to, and you can do this whether you own your home or rent your home because it's your domicile. You also have to make sure that the rents are reasonable and comparable. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I hate to break it to you, if you're a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, this will not work. You have to have, and the reason for that, in the eyes of the law, and I'm not an attorney, I don't pretend to be one on Zoom TV or the telephone, anything like that, but in the eyes of your corporation is considered to be a separate person, right? So your corporation, if you're a corp, S corp, or a multi-member LLC, you're considered to be a different person than you, and there's a separation between you and your business. So you can rent your home to your business, another person, and again, that other person, your business, can pay you rent. That's the legalese part of it, right? And remember that clear edge framework? This is part of the deduction optimization of the clear edge framework. So again, this is a huge write-off. We $25,000 per business is what we find. And I don't know about you, but I could do a lot with 25 grand out of my business, tax free, right? So the fine print on this is you have to, because people are like, well, I use my home as my office, right? So does that qualify? No, because if you're using your home as your office for more than 14 days, that strategy is out the window. So you can use the home office deduction. We want to do that a different way. We don't want to rent your home for the home office. We want to handle that through what we call an accountable plan as a reimbursement. Reimbursements are tax-free. We want to save the rental part of your house for events. So it has to be an event that is business related. It cannot be entertainment. And again, we have to charge reasonable or fair market rent. We can't inflate. I'm going to give you an example of a meeting. What does this look like to you? I'm going to see if you guys are paying attention. Put it in the chat or the Q&A. Throw out there. What does this look like to you? George, what does that look like to you, my friend?
Some leisure, maybe.
Okay. Kind of a vision board type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you held an event for a vision board, if you gathered your team together and said, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Let's put together some vision board. Like that would be a vision board. Like I see Ryan throwing in their retirement. Perfect. So you're saying, okay, what do I want to accomplish? Putting vision board type stuff, right? So that's one example I like to call out for what types of events can you have. So I like to say, you can have networking style events, a client appreciation barbecue. If you're looking to expand your team, if you're looking to hire or an employee or work with a new subcontractor, right? You can have a appreciation at your barbecue, your house, and say, hey, my employees, who are you just dying to work with? Who would you love to show up every day and work with them side by side? Invite them to my home. We're going to have an employee appreciation event. My dad always said, my dad's one of my heroes. He said, you get to know somebody when you break bread and you break sweat, right? So you can get a two into them, loosen up, they drop their guard. You can tell pretty quickly what type of a person are they. Are they somebody that you want to show up and work with every day, right? So you can use it as a recruiting event. Lunch and learn spotlight. I had a gal, she had a company where month, weather permitting, she would have people to her home. She would do it potluck style. So bring your favorite chili dish, right? Or your cornbread. If your name is A through whatever, bring chili. And if you're whatever through this, bring dessert or bring cornbread. And she would have a backyard movie night. So she would pop up a movie screen and stream a movie. And cost of entry, I loved this. The cost of entry to her event every month was a can of food or non-perishable item for the local food bank. I love that. It's like you're doing community involvement, raising food for people that are hungry outside of Christmas and Thanksgiving, and you're supporting your community. And guess what? She had a big old banner across the table. Hey, leave your items here in the bucket or barrel, and event sponsored by her company name. And if somebody forgot to bring their food, she'd be like, that's cool. The food bank QR code's right there. You can scan and donate $5, right? So nobody got out of, and she would do social media posts after the fact saying, hey, so proud of my community. This month we had a record 520 items raised for the local food bank. So proud to be a member of my community. Thank you to my company for hosting this event. So she got social proof that an event actually happened, right? These are the types of things that you can do. So you got to keep it business related, strategic planning, partnership meetings, those types of things. So here's an example of somebody that actually took, these are real numbers. So they said, okay, I don't want to turn into an event planner. I don't want to spend, my life doing 14 events a year. So how do I do this in a smart way? I picked 4 large events, 4 bigger events where they got quotes. Average quote was $3,500 per event. So they had 4 of those for 3,500 times 4 is $14,000. Then they had 4 medium-sized events. They had, their subcontractors come in and they ran like a quarterly, hey, we're going to talk about safety issues. We're going to talk about anti-sexual harassment stuff. Like we're going to do, all the stuff that you should do as a business owner. Like, hey, don't do stupid things when you're on my watch, right? Like they use it as a way to build their team and educate their team and bring subject matter in. How do you identify hail damage, or, let's talk about repair versus replace and sales training and all that kind of good stuff. So they had 4 of those events per year. Now, the larger events of 30, 40, 50 people, right? Setting up a barbecue or client appreciation, that's a little bit more effort to organize. And the higher the head count, higher the quote. So they got, for the medium-sized events, they got a quote for about $2,200 per event. So that's 2,200 times 4 is $8,800. So then they filled the gap because they had 4 plus 4 is 8 meetings. So they had 6 more additional meetings that they could have held during the year. So they said, you know what? Hey, it's just going to be me, my general manager, and my business partner. So 2 or 3 people. And they got a quote for it'd be $950 a day to kind of rent out a boardroom office space to say, hey, we want to have a meeting. And so they were able to get up to, in this case, $28,500 was the value that the company wrote checks after each event. They got the comparable quotes and they were able to write a check for a total of $28,500 for the year in rent that their business paid to them tax-free, baby. Pretty amazing stuff. So again, and the quote, the magic you're seeking is found in the work you are avoiding, right? There are things that you have to do to get $28,500 in this case out of your business tax-free. So before the event, during the event, and after the event, there are things that you need to do. And to be audit proof, you got to do the work. This is what's missing on TikTok, social media, right? That people don't tell you about, that they don't have the before, during, and after. This is the magic, right? Before the event, I break it down like this. I say you really should define the event. You should spend some time to define the event. Who's going to attend? What business? How is this going to improve your business? What benefit is this going to do for your business? And what type of event is this? Networking, training, etc. So once you've defined the event, now you plan the event. You say, okay, let's create an agenda. Do I need a PA system? Do I need a screen so that I can put numbers and metrics up on the for people to take notes? Do I need to have a presentation? What does that look like? If you do that work, defining the event, planning the event, putting that stuff together, and then you get on the phone and you call XYZ Event Center and say, hi, I'd like a quote for 30 people for an event. What kind of quote do you think you're going to get? Probably like, well, I don't know. They're going to give you a generic quote because you just gave them generic information. But if you get on the phone, you're like, hey, thanks for picking up the phone. I would like an event. I would like to have this thing. I'd like a PA system. I like seating. I like round tables so that people can kind of mix and mingle. I'd like a buffet area for the food. What's the cost of catering? Da, 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 da. Get with them when you're asking for a quote, the better quote you're going to get. Make sense? The devil's in the details at the end of the day, right? The devil's in the details. So if you can get granular on what type of an event you want, then you're going to get a better quote. You're going to get a better value. So what we do is we like to say, hey, you don't want to spend your life getting quotes. So, again, I had a guy, he's like, Chris, I don't want to be an event planner. That's not what I do. I'm a roofer. I don't want to be an event planner. I'm like, that's cool, man. You don't have to be an event planner. You can get twice a year. You can reach out. You can say, hey, I have this type of event. I like to say twice a year. I like to say, hey, right about now, February, March-ish is when you want to kind of reach out to venues and get a quote for, hey, in this upcoming spring and summer, I want to have some events. Here's what the type of events. I say a minimum of 3 quotes per event type. And then in, I don't know, September, October is when you want to kind of get refresh quotes, because what happens right now, if you reach out, you're going to get a quote for the spring, summer. And then what do people do? They raise their prices because guess what? Costs are not going down. So after the summer, they raise their prices for what's going to be the winter and holiday season events. So to really get the best bang for your buck on this, you really should be doing twice a year, spend an hour or two to get the quotes. And then guess what? You spend a couple hours to do the work and you can pull 25, 24, 28. We had one client, they had a really unique situation. They could have taken a deduction of $144,000 for 14 events because they had a really unique situation and a really unique property. He looked at me and he's like, I can't in good conscience that I'm going to take like $1 deduction. I'm like, all right, bro, you're totally shortchanging yourself, but that's cool. Right. He had done the work. He had gotten the quotes and he was able to do, he could have done $144,000. He chose not to. I want to show you this. So real quick, actually, I'll come back to this one. So when you get the quotes, let's say you reach out to a venue and they say, you give them over the phone and they're, they don't want to waste their time giving you a formal quote because they're not sure if you're going to actually do the work and go use their facility. So if they won't give you a formal quote, be respectful of people's time and just say, hey, Bob at XYZ Event Center, thanks for taking my call. What's your email? Oh, it's bob@eventcenter.com. Perfect. Hey, I'm going to send you an email and just say, hey, recap conversation that we just had on the phone today, right? So you send an email to Bob and you say, hey, thanks for taking my call on today's date. We spoke about this event, and then you say, we discussed that the price would be this. Is that accurate? Even if Bob never responds, you never get a response. You now have an email that went out that you can print out as proof of a conversation that you picked up the phone and had that conversation. You didn't just fabricate that. You didn't get that email out of nowhere. It came from somewhere. So that's how you create a paper trail and audit proof when you go to the IRS. If they look at your stuff and they're like, hey, did you actually get quotes, right? So then during the event, you document the event. You take pictures like my gal with the food donation, right? She has social proof. She has stuff that this actually happened. Follow people after the fact and say, hey, you send out invitations, emails, you send people an event after the fact and say, hey, Tyler, thanks for coming to dude, I didn't know that you really were jonesing to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've never met him either. Let me see if I can find somebody in my network and we should have lunch, right? That's what happens when you do events, right? Business networking happens. You learn about people's businesses, their goals, what they want to accomplish. And then you can send them an email and follow up. That's the human aspect of this. And say, man, thank you for coming to my event today. I really enjoyed our conversation and I had no clue that you were passionate about blah, blah, blah. That's so cool. Get together and talk about that more and see how I can support you, right? So you got to actually have and host the events. You can't just say you did, right? Thank you, Captain Obvious. You actually got to do the work and have the events. And then after the event, you gather all that documentation, you pull it all together, your proof, your quotes, your invitations, you got the email that you sent out, whether you got a formal quote or not, and you create that write-off and write the check to yourself from your business, right? Create the invoice and write the check. Remember, this strategy does not work if you're not a multi-member LLC or a corporation, either taxed as an S corporation or as a C corp. So tying it all together, did I freeze up? Am I still there?
I can still hear you. I think
Okay.
you're good to go.
As long as you hear me, I'm not that pretty to look at. But all right. So before, during, and after, you really got to do the work to pull all these things together. So let's talk about audits real quick. We like it when other people get audited. We don't like it when we get audited. We like it when other people get audited because then we can learn about, okay, what is the IRS looking for? There are some tax people out there, they're like, the Augusta Rule is no longer valid. There's an audit that happened in 2017. So it's been a while. But these three brothers, they were each pulling down like $300,000-$400,000 a pop. So three brothers pulling down $300,000-$400,000 each. And they had taken the Augusta Rule to the tune of about 30 to 40 grand per brother. So 90 to $120,000 a year in Augusta Rule rent, right? Now they had a pretty sizable business, but that's a lot of be paying. And they got a question in an audit, and the IRS went through and they're like, oh yeah, we're doing the Augusta Rule. And they're like, cool. So they talked through it and they're like, okay, what were you doing? Oh, we were having trainings and networking events and all legitimate things. Like the court in this court case acknowledged that their Augusta Rule events were legit. But where they got tripped up was they said, how did you determine that $30,000 to $40,000 a year was the right amount? And they couldn't produce receipts. They couldn't produce quotes. They couldn't produce that was legitimately fair market value. So the IRS actually, the court, because it went up to IRS, the tax court, the court actually went out and got comparable quotes. And here's where they went wrong. The court said they got quotes for $500 per night. So the court reached out and got quotes for a hotel. And I'm sorry, I don't have people over. My client that does the backyard, movie social event, she doesn't have 50 people showing up to put in overnight arrangements to have a sleepover slumber party at her house, right? So I argue, and I'm this by tax attorneys and other accountants, and they're like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. You're getting a quote for a hotel at $500 a night. You're getting a quote for a venue to host an event. So that's where the court said, hey, the quote they came up with was $500 a night, and the taxpayers didn't have anything to that. So don't be them. Don't get caught taking that you can't defend. Get quotes for the event, not an overnight venue. I don't like people that much. I'm a people person, but I don't like people that much. I don't want them to come over and spend the night at my house. Like, come up, show up. Hey, let's have a rager party and business networking, and then get the heck out. I want to go to sleep. I'm old. My bedtime's like 9:00. Let's go. So, get the right quotes and do the work so you can defend and show that you did the before, during, and after the work for your event. Does that kind of make sense, right? So again, welcome to Fabulous Vagueness. Who learned something cool today? Between the Augusta Rule, between the ADA compliance. So I challenge you to do something with this. I've seen the emails coming through where I love this. I love it when we see that people are taking advantage of the resources. Folks, don't waste money on taxes. Like, this is part of the deduction optimization. And we've talked about 2 tax strategies within our framework, right? So if you have questions at this point, let's take them. Any questions that you have? I see that there's been a couple of questions. We've already kind of answered them in the chat as we went through. A little bit about me, since I've been doing taxes for almost 20 years. I don't know, about 6-7 years ago, I was sitting there and I had my checkbook out in front of me, and I wanted to barf. I just wanted to throw up because I was about to write the biggest check of my life for anything that I'd ever bought or paid for. And I wasn't buying a car, doing a Bora Bora hut over the water vacation. I wish it was. I was about to write the check for my tax bill. And I was like, man, this is screwed up. I'm the guy. I'm supposed to have the answers, right? And I had been caught in a cycle of reactivity. I'd been so busy doing my business and serving my clients that I hadn't paid attention. It was at that moment that I said, I need to change something. So that's when, both for myself and my clients, came up with what has now become the clear framework to say, here's how we examine somebody's situation, say, how can they stop paying money in taxes, overpaying the government, only pay your fair share, right? Which is still too much, but giving people the answers that they need to pay less into the government. So that's who I am, and that's who Make Taxes Fair is. MakeTaxesFair.com up. George, with your permission, I'd like to share one more thing. And
Go on
appreciate
ahead.
Awesome, awesome. Who here has heard of blasted BOI, Beneficial Ownership Information Report? This stupid thing has been ping-ponging back and forth. Not many people are aware of it, but the BOI is something called by FinCEN, the Financial Crime Enforcement Network, and it's a joint task force between Financial Crime Enforcement Network and the IRS or U.S. Treasury. Bottom line is it's a one-time disclosure that you now are, as of today, are now due. So last year they were leading up, they were saying, hey, if you don't do this, deadline is January or December 31st, you got to get it done and do this one-time stupid disclosure form of here's who owns my business. They're trying to prevent money laundering and illicit activity. There's a court case where somebody sued the government and said, hey, this is not constitutional. The government came out and said, that's cool. Only the people that are suing us are suspended. Everybody else still has to do it if you're not a party of that court case. And then a couple days before Christmas, the IRS came out and said, or the courts came out and said, hey, just kidding. We're going to suspend this. Nobody has to do it. And then a few days later, they said everybody has to do it. And then since then, it's ping pong back and forth in a crap show of government efficiency. As of today, if you go to fincen.boi.gov, fincen.gov/BOI, this lovely, let's see, can you see my screen? Yeah, this lovely information report is back on the menu as of today. So you have until 30 days from February 19th, which is today, to get this done. If you don't, there's penalties of like $530 or $550 per day. It's stupid. But fincen.gov/BOI. If you're not doing shady stuff in your business, I'm anti-government intrusion into my life, so I get it, but it's a requirement that you need to do this and avoid massive penalties. It's back on the menu if you haven't done it. So that's who we are. That's who Make Taxes Fair is. And I hope that you found that this has been a worthy hour of your time. If you're watching us live, thank you for being here. If you're catching the replay later. So George, I'll turn it back to you, my friend, and close us out.
Wow, that was freaking awesome. I know this time of year, I myself and probably everybody else on here is stressed about how much they're going to have to pay in taxes. So this took a little bit of that stress off my shoulders. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on and share that today. Did have one more question for you, and then I'm just going to wrap in the closing thoughts. And that's if people do want to get in contact with you, they want to learn more, talk to you, whatever it may be, what's the best way for them to kind of enter into your world?
Yeah, the maketaxesfair.com/volume up. That's where you can get those resources. And here, I'll just share my screen. If you're interested and you want to chat with us, you can go up there in the contact, or if you can get your tax analysis, you can say, hey, let's take some action and then book a time to talk to us. We're happy to chat with anybody and see, are we a good fit to work together? But we have some resources on our website. So yeah, maketaxesfair.com/volume up is where you can go to get both the resources today and then chat with us and learn more.
That's awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tyler. I know nobody can actually unmute themselves and talk, but behind your hidden computer screen, I want you all to give Chris and Tyler a round of applause. Just thank them for being here today because they did this out of the kindness of their heart and didn't pay them a dime. So thank you guys. Lauren gave a little round of applause there. Appreciate it, Lauren. But anything else you want to cover today before we kind of go into closing?
I would just say kudos to you, George, for putting on this resource. Like, this is not your sandbox, but I applaud you for bringing to your tribe and your community stuff that is outside of the scope of what you do. And so friends, our mantra is friends don't let friends of the government. So, same thing with other resources. George, where can people go to subscribe to get notifications about your stuff that you're doing? And if you guys all found this useful, share this with a friend. Where can they get the replay to this?
Yeah, so that's going to be going actually into our Facebook group, and all the recordings from our sessions will go there. You can go back, watch them. get the access to the resources and links there. And Chris, I would love if you could send me over that FinCEN link too, so I could drop it in the training. And then also, if you guys are interested, you can go ahead, join the group, and every single weekly training that we do going forward, anything from strategy to kind of getting your life back from your business. I know a lot of us become kind of beholden to our business and no longer able to hang out with family, friends, etc. How to sell at higher rates. Everything you need to grow a business is going to be in there. And I'm bringing in a lot of cool people who are for some reason nice to me and decide to do this for free, just like Chris and Tyler today. So if you're interested in doing that, you guys can go to the link that I'm going to drop in the chat below, and I'll see y'all there. And if not, that's fine too, right? Do what you need to do. So with that being said,
Yeah.
this is an awesome session. I'm actually going to go right now and go through the rest of your community and see how I can not get bent over so hard by the IRS this year, part of my crudeness. But yeah, appreciate it, Chris. Appreciate it, Tyler.
Yeah, I just group. So don't gatekeep. Share. It's good stuff.
More gatekeeping there, so everybody can come in. But cool, Tyler. Any last notes from you?
Honestly, it just takes action. We are proactive, and we let to people get the information, check it out, because every person that we help, every business we work with, we get massive returns for. It's the power of the code. I mean, our clients are seeing 30 to 50% on average of your total tax bill saved, and we often go higher than that just because it's available to everybody. So go look at your tax returns. Look at the line item, see how much you paid in total tax in a year, and imagine half of that being saved because of implementing strategies like this and 400 plus others that are available. That's how powerful it is. So yeah, I mean, ask questions, engage with us. We're not a hard sell company. We love to just deliver and share information, and when it makes sense, it makes sense.
Yeah, and this is awesome. I appreciate that today. I have a big weight lifted off my shoulders, and I know I have a lot of people I've spoken to this week that wanted to watch it. A lot of them had other engagements, especially kids, with
Yeah.
the age of a lot of roofing company owners
Yeah.
at this time of night. So maybe we'll do them earlier going forward. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming on. It means a lot. And then everybody here, go join their group. Make sure you get value out of it. And I'll see you next week. I think our next one is next Tuesday. But again, I'll put those details in the group when it's ready. So
Appreciate it. Thanks, George.
have a good night, y'all. Take care.
Thank you.
Later.
Bye.